Hello everyone, welcome to Weekly Basketball Talk. Today, we're going to be talking about Heat versus Celtics, but before we get into that, I want to introduce you to the new channel. This is my first video. I just want to give you a quick rundown on what this channel is about. Just giving you a quick, I'm going to explain somewhat what this channel is about. This channel is going to be a weekly uploading channel where you're going to see me on camera, and you're going to see me talking about basketball games that I thought were intriguing throughout the week. It might be one game, 2 games, 3 games, depending on how my schedule is. I will try to cover at least one basketball game, in-depth analysis of one game every single week. I'll be giving you a pregame. I'll be giving you 1 through 4 quarters, and I'll tell you who performed well, who was outstanding, who was the best player on each team for the day. I'll talk about all that stuff. Now today, as I mentioned, I'm going to be talking about the Heat versus the Celtics. Coming into this game, the Heat were the first seed and the Celtics were the 3rd seed. But they were having 2 very different backgrounds coming into this game. The Heat came into this game. They were sliding. They were the number 1 seed, but they were sliding. Their last 10 games, their last 10 games they were 4-6. They were sliding. And everyone knows about the off the court issues they had. Udonis Haslem, Jimmy Butler, and Eric Spoelstra, they got into a bit of a scuffle. And recently, coming into this game, they were sliding. They were struggling. But there's a reason they're the number 1 seed. Also coming into this game, the Celtics were the 3rd seed, and they were on a roll. They were on a tear. They were coming in this game 8-2. In fact, they showed statistics that since January, the Celtics have been one of the best teams in the NBA. Now, as I mentioned, the Celtics were coming on a hot streak, and they were doing really well, while the Heat, they were struggling. But I knew before watching this game, this was going to be a really good game, as both teams are only 1 game apart. So if the Celtics won this game, they could have tied the record. But if the Heat won this game, they could get a further lead on everybody in the West. Everyone in the East. Now, as I mentioned, the Celtics came into this game. They had a record of, I think they had a 500 record coming into January. And ever since January, they've been one of the hottest teams. But I didn't know what to expect. The first thing I noticed in the first quarter was Marcus Smart was running the point guard. Before tip-off, I noticed I didn't see a traditional point guard. The traditional point guard, Kyle Lowry, Steph Curry, stuff like that. A facilitator. I saw Marcus Smart. I was thinking maybe they're trying something different. Now, starting off this game in the first quarter, I noticed Jaylen Brown was hot. Jaylen Brown was on fire. Jaylen Brown had all the Celtics points at a time. He had 11 of the 11 Celtics points. He was the only one scoring. Now, Miami, they were scoring, but more as a unit. Everybody was kind of eating. Everybody was kind of getting their own shots. Everybody was kind of just scoring. It was more equal scoring-wise. Now, the first thing I noticed on the Celtics side, besides Jaylen Brown, was Marcus Smart was creating his own shot. And I was thinking to myself, okay, so I see what the Celtics are trying to do. They're having him run the point guard. He's going to create spots for everybody else. He's going to find his own spot. And I'm thinking to myself, Marcus Smart has become a shot creator now. Marcus Smart was a stationary shoot the ball, catch and shoot guy. Now he's starting to become someone who can create a shot off the dribble. I thought that was impressive. Now, the first thing I noticed with the Celtics was I noticed Tatum didn't play much in the first quarter. That kind of concerned me. I was like, why? I was thinking, Jaylen Brown looks like the best player on the floor. Yes, but where is Jason Tatum? I noticed Jason Tatum didn't really play that quarter, and it probably was due to foul trouble. But with the first quarter, I noticed Miami was throwing a lot of lobs. The Celtics were shooting a lot of threes, but Miami was throwing a lot of lobs. And it was very back and forth and close. It was a very back and forth game, but Miami had control going into the second quarter. But I did notice the Celtics did take the lead. There was also a buzzer beater going into the second quarter. Now, early on in the beginning of the second quarter, it was not much scoring. They were kind of just getting stops on each other. They were just getting stops and going back and forth. And then towards the middle of the quarter, they started going back and forth. They started going bucket for bucket, bucket for bucket. No one could seem to. It's funny how at the beginning they couldn't score. Now they can't be stopped. Both teams couldn't be stopped. Now, the Celtics, they managed to take control towards the middle of the second quarter. I noticed that. They were taking control and they were starting to create a lead. Also, with the Celtics doing that, I noticed Jaylen Brown was on the court. He was still doing really good. Jaylen Brown was still doing really good, but Jason Tatum came in and he started doing really good. Jason Tatum started helping Jaylen Brown create shots, and he started helping overall the Celtics get a flow going, and they took the lead. Now, for the Miami Heat, I noticed that Tyler Hero was great off the bench. I noticed he wasn't a starter. I was like, there's this new guy who's a starter. And I was like, I don't even know who this is. Duncan Robinson isn't starting anymore, and neither is Tyler Hero. So, with Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson off the bench, Duncan Robinson was pretty good off the bench, but Tyler Hero was sensational. He was absolutely amazing. I was like, Tyler Hero, initially his first few shots, he was kind of shaky, but then he got into the flow, and he started getting points for them off the bench, and he was a really good punch off the bench. Now, in this quarter, Marcus Smart was really pesky. The commentators talked about that. He's getting a lot of stops. He was getting a few steals. Like, Marcus Smart was being an overall pest. He's known for that. He's known for being a defensive guy. So, the Celtics, towards the end of the quarter, gained a solid lead. And Tatum started to emerge, like I said. But towards the end of the quarter, towards the middle, the Celtics had a solid lead. But towards the end of the quarter, Miami took the lead, and they were leading going into the half. They just went on a run, and they went bucket for bucket. But Miami was able to take the lead, and they went to halftime with the lead. Now, to start the quarter off in the third quarter, I noticed Kyle Lowry emerged. He was doing really good for the Heat. I noticed Kyle Lowry was getting little spots here and there throughout the first and second quarter, but he really stepped it up in the third quarter. He really ramped it up in the third quarter. Now, the Miami Heat started off the quarter really strong. They started off really strong. They were getting the most buckets. They started off hot. They started off just getting all the points. Now, I started to see Marcus Smart. He was hurting more than he was helping. He started to struggle. I noticed that Marcus Smart was struggling, and I was like, he's taking a few threes that's costing him as Miami's starting to score. Marcus Smart's missing, and I was like, Marcus Smart, I don't know how to feel about Marcus Smart. He's a great defensive guy, great role player, but he tries to play outside his role sometimes, and I just sit there like, I don't understand why you're playing out your role. But towards the middle of the quarter, the Celtics started to come back. They rallied back. The Celtics went on an 8-0 run, and Miami couldn't score. They went on an 8-0 run, and then Miami couldn't score. They were able to they went into the middle of the third down by 3. They were down, I think, 11. And then they scored 8 straight points, no answers, and Miami was only up by 3. Now, Miami took a quick timeout to get a breather and try to recuperate, but then the Celtics started ramping up. The Celtics started to pull away. They reeled off 16 straight points. I was thinking, oh my, this has been a back and forth onslaught. They've been going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And now the Celtics are starting to pull away. But they finished the quarter off strong. The Celtics had the lead going into the fourth. And I was thinking to myself, maybe the Celtics will win this game. Now, early on, Miami managed to emerge. They started to get some shots off. They started to push back. They started to push back against the Celtics. The Celtics had the lead for majority of the third. Towards the end of the third, starting the fourth, but Miami started to push back. They started to get a few buckets. Dwayne Dedmon was solid for the Miami Heat, but he was somewhat costing them with these fouls. He had a lot of fouls. He even fouled out. And I don't think I talked about it enough, but Jaylen Brown was absolutely amazing. Again in the fourth quarter, Jaylen Brown was absolutely amazing. Jaylen Brown was just the best player on the floor this game. Jaylen Brown was the best player on the floor. He was playing good defense. He was scoring at will. Jaylen Brown looked like a superstar. Now, another thing I noticed, Daniel Tice did really good. He was doing really good for the Celtics. Jason Tatum was doing really good for the Celtics. Overall, they started to click. But I did notice players such as Bam, Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, Kyle Lowry, they started to help and push back. Even Dwayne Dedmon, they started to push back against the Celtics, and they were able to get the lead. They took the lead, and essentially from then, they didn't look back. The Miami Heat took the lead. They started going back and forth, but Miami took the lead, and they got separation. They were able to close them out, and a really hard-fought win against the Celtics. It was a 106-98 win for the Miami Heat. They did amazing, and Miami was able to just close out the game efficiently. Now, as I said, I would be doing who was the best player on the floor for one team and the other team, and who was the best for both teams. So Jaylen Brown was the best for both teams. However, I will mention that it was Kyle Lowry. I'll give it to Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry was the best player for Miami. Jimmy Butler, he was also really good, but I wouldn't say he was the best. But Jaylen Brown was unanimously the best player on both sides. Jason Tatum was also really good. Tyler Hero was amazing off the bench, if you consider off the bench. Duncan Robinson was pretty good. Bam was good all around. He had He didn't have many points, but he did have a lot of rebounds and assists. Daniel Tice was pretty good for them. I heard it was most points for Daniel Tice since he had returned to the Celtics, because at the time he had left the Celtics. And Marcus Smart, he was shaky. Initially, he was really good, but then he got shaky. He started to miss shots and started to cost them more than he was helping. Overall, this was a really good game and hard-fought game, and I loved covering it. I loved reviewing it, watching it, and taking notes on it. Now, thank you for watching this video. This is my first video, and I will be uploading more soon. But don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. This is Weekly Basketball Talk signing out.